everyone. This is Just Fine and Brilliant with 2 MK with another Disc Guidance. Today we are going to be looking at one of the newly released bots that we had done the previous weekend. We had released, of course, Honda, Poison, and Lucia, all currently available on 2-mk.org/bots. So, we have obviously gone through quite a bit of work, but wanted to show off all of the bots, even though we only really had one weekend before release. So today we are going to do a somewhat shorter video segment, but it will focus on all of the necessary features. Again, you can check on the page now. So, that being said, Poison Bot is a representation of a character who can do a lot of frame traps and getting around that playstyle. Is a zoner, which makes her a little bit difficult to make a bot out of in a way that can stay more pressure-oriented players overall style. However, we did figure out a way to make use of some of the point system to make sure that you won't always be rewarded for pressuring her, much like some of our other zoner characters. So, what does Poison Bot help you with? The main thing Poison Bot is for is mostly helping you with understanding your ranges, much like Bot and Lucia Bot. It was sort of a theme of all of these new characters. And for Poison in particular, it is long range. Obviously, it has a lot more reach than other characters. And due to how her moves work and putting that extra long reach to it, she is also decent at jump timings and the like. There we go, that should help the sound a little bit, I hope. So another theme with these 3 newest characters, a lot of how you derive benefit from the bots has to do with mindsets. All 3 of these characters are at least moderate, if not at least a little more difficult than that, and in Lucia's case, advanced. So, the main things you are looking for mindset-wise against Poison are your ability to let her do her stuff and then do the correct response. for example, one of the main points which we will go over is punishing her V-skill. However, if you are not aware of your range and when she has hit you with any of her follow-ups from the V-skill, or if she is not quite in range to do the proper anti-airs, which we will discuss later, you can end up doing the wrong anti-air, getting hit, losing advantage, or just flatly not getting the points. Additionally, she has a command grab in her V-trigger 2, which forces you to have a little bit more awareness than easy level bots. So not only are you worried about keeping the proper spacing to get some of your points, and generally dealing with an opponent who can be deceptive with their air range, since she has various ways she can use her V-skill along with her fairly okay zoner jumping buttons.
KO.
And of course, in order to jump on such a character, it is pretty unsafe to do so unless she is already doing something. Since Poison's back quarter circle whip allows her to hold it, which can make for a tricky situation against an actual player who knows what they're doing and knows how to position. For this character in particular, we have found that the CPU has an actual use, unlike some of the other characters. And it is mostly to help you learn what is something you can't get away with on the bot, since again, part of the difficulty with this type of character archetype means that you can do things, and honestly it's difficult to tell sometimes against this type of bot if you are doing something that is successful against the bot but not necessarily against a person with pretty good reaction or whatever. However, we do our best to mitigate a lot of that, especially with our point system. So the CPU is more of a pilot in learning what to not do. And you can generally do that before you start the bot, or a little bit after, once you start getting used to her. Either tends to be fine. So one of the main other points as is jumping in, and everyone has a different way of jumping in. But if you are a character with a cross-up, you should be aiming for that. What this means is that if Poison is doing something with one of her normal buttons, and you are not at the right spacing, you won't be able to get the cross-up. And if you try to preempt her, there is quite a decent amount of risk of you just getting hit by one of her buttons. As you can see, she does up on the line, which is the quarter circle forward punch move. which has a fairly decent range. On block, it's fairly unsafe, but since you don't get any points for it, it's more so a risk factor against body, like you can see there. If you just go jumping around, she has plenty of ways to hit you. So, a lot of this has to do with carefully focusing on your spacing in situations where you would not have as much advantage as you might have against most other characters. So, let's take a look at the CPU real quick just to show you what we mean by her ability to show you what not to do before we get into probably going to get anti-air that gives her medium punch a bit more. You can still land cross-ups against the CPU fine, but the situations in which you get away with doing those cross-ups may differ. It really depends on your character, so what you learn from it, don't try to get too worked up about figuring out everything all at once. Since a lot of character-specific stuff may take a little bit of time, especially if you are more of an intermediate player. But here you can see she does actually do some of the similar things. She just tends to zone you a little more. But by zoning you a little more, this pushes you out where she has slightly less advantage. So you have less of a chance to learn the cross-ups. But generally, there's not too much more. This CPU tends to just do a lot more damage, have a little better agility, and as far as teaching you wise goes, there's not too much more to learn. So, returning to the bot.
KO.
So we get a few extra things out of Poison's ability set because of her differently ranged command throws on each of the two. You can practice using backdash to avoid command throws if you are the type of person who is a little bit more afraid of command throws. This may be a good way to get you over that fear, since you get to stand a bit further away, which may not alleviate all of your fear, but for the most part, command throw characters are kind of scary because they can follow up with pressure if you guess incorrectly, and they go for pressure instead of... So, you can still practice your backdash, as you may have seen on the team a few times now. I've been able to backdash that fairly consistently on reaction. It's a decent skill to have, jumping against it is better in most cases, depending on your spacing. However, depending on your ability set, it may be good to get it clean. She is an interesting character because she has so many ways to close in space if she wants to, which aren't necessarily safe, but since they're so either quick or unexpected or confusing, it lets her get away with certain things. And Poison Bot in particular is very good at making sure you take not only damage from missing your whiff punches against her longer moves, or having incorrect spacing on your jump in, but she also does something some of our other bots do, but she does fairly well in particular, is get away from you and take the advantage from her longer buttons, making it so that you are focused on a different piece of the puzzle and are more liable to taking damage since it's the riskier part of the puzzle, which is closing the space and getting that cross-up we mentioned earlier. So, let us go over the point system real quick since I've been referring to it a few times. The first point is getting the skill anti-aired or air-to-aired, whatever works best for your character. At the easy levels, this is basically all you have to do.
Perfect KO.
However, as you progress and get better at the bot, and are ready to learn more, you want to start doing a knockdown or a known air reset for your character. A lot of characters have knockdowns that let you punish and follow up, but you also can use this particular point system to help you practice your cross-ups against the beast. So, not all characters have very good or very useful crosscut initiators, but I highly encourage you, especially once you get past the beginning stages of this bot, to take advantage of the fact that it's sort of easy, but still very hard in that you have to keep very close track of her spacing when she does it, and what button she hits during the E skill, since she is able to hit multiple buttons out of that E skill, not just her head.
Perfect KO.
The second point is that jump in I was talking about, the cross-up jump in. You want to be able to follow that up into a combo. Not all characters are able to do this, so what you want to do on characters who do not have a cross-up that goes into a combo, you want to do an empty jump into throw. or an ambiguous jump attack using a quick air button that looks like it can toss up but hits in front. Sort of like, for example, Bison's Devil's Reverse or something like that. But most people who use this type will be using like medium kick or light kick. Those usually tend to be the more tricky of the buttons on those types of characters. The third point is attacking Poison's throw. Much like Wakanda, this is partially to help you build your defensive reactions, but it also makes you more tense when she's up close, and reminds you a little more subtly that you don't always want to be next to this character since she is a pretty fast character. But if you can consistently throw tech, you have made the frame trap game a little easier on yourself. And she does not always do this after dash up, much like our more advanced bots who have the attack point. But she can also do dash up command throw, so be careful, you may get thrown anyway. But that too is a part of the awareness and overall understanding of the rhythm, and understanding how to space yourself against the bot and learning the reaction time for the throw tech. And finally, the last point is to whiff punish for her shocking feel, that upper kick move. If she hits you with it and you block, you should probably still learn the punishes for that, but it's fairly unsafe on block, so that does not really count for a point. It only counts if she did not hit you. And that is probably the trickiest part of this bot, and the part that makes her work and function as a bot, since that forces you to be at a range that is advantageous to Poison in order to get that point. So you learn by indirect contact that you may not be able to punish her at certain ranges. She can push you out, and therefore you learn the spacing from there, and how to approach getting in on her after she pushes you out at that range. You can learn the defenses, and you are at much greater risk of being thrown and command thrown at that range, as well as her B-Trigger 1, which we haven't really discussed, but is still usable on this bot. Which can put you in a bit of a pickle. So, with the point system out of the way, we will be going over each of her recordings. And Rillian will be on mic.
Good evening, everyone. Let's go straight into discussing Poison's inputs. Specifically, she has some that are still have a tiny chance of being upgraded, and given direct variance, and we're still doing some final tests, more so for how you want to face her V trigger wise, but since we still need a little bit more feedback from people, we don't know exactly and we are leaving it up to you in some ways. This is on our page for Poison Spot, but let's look into it more quickly from just the first ones. Poison's Action 1 here. And I will turn this on actually the other way. Her Action 1 is a standing or forward triple punch. If it is forward, it must be first frame. You can check our glossary as to how exactly to do that. And it helps if it's forward because it allows for her V reversal. But again, if that's difficult or you're not too familiar and you're in a rush, so you're inputting it at some tournament station or something, you might just want to use the standing triple punch. Delay a little bit and hide a medium punch plus medium kick, i.e. V skill. It does not matter which direction you're holding when you do this, really, but we suggest just releasing and hitting it standing. And then you want to hit 4 twice. This does not actually have to be a backdash. Depending on your character, you might only want her to inch backward. Specifically, there are characters who punish backdashes really easily, and who also get through zoning decently quickly when they try to. For this type of character, you actually want her to have this, especially if the move you use for it is unsafe. You just want to tap back twice to give her a little inch back and some blocking time. And finally, quarter circle backward. So, triple punch, V skill, back dash, quarter circle back, and end the recording instantly, of course without hitting a button. Use the end recording button as the button as if you were doing the quarter circle back attack. You actually need to do this input fairly relaxed to get her to do it. And if she's on the right timing, this actually also allows her to use, as you can see, her high version of that whip strike. She will also use the EX version, of course. You do not need to hold the V skill button here. It's often something you see in our bots, but it turned out that she didn't work better with the V skill button held for Action 1. It does not matter really if she backdashes or does EX whip. Her timing will usually fix it on its own and you don't really have to do much of anything. So this is a relatively easy input, but it's very important. So we leave it on Action 1 because it also helps you to test others as you put them in. We have a large goal to make it as quick as possible for you to input this when you need it. Action 2 is considerably harder. Her Action 2 is another standing triple punch, and this time you probably want it straight up standing. You hit this from close so that the move can combo. But not actually to do this directly. The way she triggers this move can cause her to cancel into the light version of her forward whip, and you want her to do that as quickly as possible. It is actually fairly difficult to get her to do the light whip from the heavy punch if you don't do it right. But once you've got it, once you've got that heavy punch, in this case triple punch, into quarter circle forward light punch, and it actually does combo, you're probably good. From there, you generally want to wait a little bit, and then hit the throw. You are in fact trying to hide, therefore, the second part. You'll find the timing as you go. The recording is actually fast only at the beginning, and after that it becomes a much slower, more relaxed sort of thing. It's a forward, holding forward on the stick and throw. You do not have to, but you should hold forward for at least some small moment to allow this to go through. And the interesting thing and the difficult part of this throw is that you need to hold the light kick part of the throw until the end of the input. Depending on whether or not you're using pad or stick, this can be easy or hard, but either way, generally you just need some button you can easily hold until the end as the light kick, and leave your light punch probably in its normal place. As soon as this is done, another quarter circle forward and end the recording instantly. If you are very fast about this, she gains the ability to do her critical art. But this is not required for the bot in any way. And she should be able to do it just from here. Often she needs to hit you to actually cancel it correctly though, so. The timing for this is actually not such that she should do the critical art repeatedly, and you generally don't have to worry about it as the input itself is built to do that. She doesn't really have a way to do it. You'll notice that in this input, for example, you see it's not quite getting to the forward before hitting the light punch. But it didn't matter because negative edge and other things help out, so don't stress yourself too heavily about this, as long as it works in the end. So once again, standing, triple punch, quarter circle, forward, light punch. A throw, you must hold the light kick from this throw until the end of the recording. Another quarter circle forward and end the recording instantly. The quarter circle forward at the end of this input and the one that follows the heavy punch at the beginning of this input are the ones that combine to give you the critical art, so she won't just spam the move. For action 3, we're going back to something much simpler. A forward or standing medium kick plus light kick. We consider forward to be slightly more helpful for small reasons. They don't really come up that much. So in this case, this recording has it as forward. We've done the tests on various inputs of the bot. So we've done it this way, and we've done it as you will find it on our website with just the standing. Whatever way is easier for you to do the next part is how you should do it. As soon as she starts that move, you need to hit up forward and then do almost a half circle back from that up forward, bringing you back to down back. If you really feel like you need this character to chase you for some reason, because as your character just doesn't deal well with her wheel kick, or you just specifically want more wheel kick. Official name of that move I believe is Love Me Tender? Yes. Then you can go all the way to the back direction, but we don't suggest it. It's better for her to just have this move in neutral, and only other moves combining with it then result in her doing that wheel kick or her backward whip. Heart rate is a very powerful move, but not one that you need to spend a lot of time dealing with in terms of learning how to deal with this character's actual strengths. If you have to deal with heart rate as a general thing, this is probably not the bot to teach it to you. But, again, if you disagree with that, because of your character or your playstyle, feel free to make this roll all the way back to the back input, and she will do lots more of both heart rate and wheel kick. Her action 4 is a close-up standing throw, and you're holding that until the end, as well as right after it, down back the trigger, which you are also holding until the end. you can just put these both on shoulder buttons and you'll be fine. So throw, B trigger is hidden, and forward dash. And to get the timing right, the forward dash should also be hidden. So you're doing all of that within the throw animation. Tap one button, hold down back and tap the other button, forward dash, and end. Try to avoid inputting a quarter circle in any way while setting up your dash. And try to make sure that you generally don't have too many problems. You should record this from close enough to actually get the throw, because otherwise it will be very difficult, if not impossible, to hide the dash. And it also tells you when you're being too slow, if you're overworking yourself, for example. So you generally want to do the throw, actually have the throw hit, and input it quite quickly. If you have the throw whiff, it's a little bit hard to tell if things are right, and you might stress yourself out unnecessarily. And finally, Action 5, which is the currently most changeable input. In fact, the version we're going to show off is very slightly different from the version that is on the site. That one is still the current official version, but you can take note of this one as well. The core concepts of this don't change, but precisely the timings and which buttons are hit versus held versus number of other things do change. For this you need a back medium punch. You need to hold this button for some time, but not necessarily until the end of the input. We find it's helpful to release this button at the same time as you release the heavy punch that comes next. On the site it will mention that you can hit the trigger here. But this is completely optional. It is crouching heavy punch, or crouching the trigger. Now the reason why we have entered this as crouching heavy punch and specifically mentioned on the site that it should be down back heavy punch and yet we're showing off the version that is the opposite of what the site says, is to clarify why that is so. If you are using a V-trigger input here, it affects her various V-trigger moves. Because the direction she throws the cocktail in changes based on this. She already has one input where she will throw it close to her from Action 4. As she stands now, therefore she's more likely to try to throw it further away. In the end, this comes down to what you need from the character. However, you can make sure, if you are inputting the second input, the heavy punch of this input, as a V trigger, you can make sure that she spends more time throwing them forward and doing the close version of the grab when she is actually using V-trigger 2. Overall, understand that you can do this while holding just the heavy kick at the end and so on, but the specifics of this input shift a little bit based on what you want from her. The important parts are the parts I've said already. Back medium punch. This does not need to be first frame, but on certain inputs it might be helpful. And you need at least a crouching heavy punch. Whether or not that must be down back heavy punch has more so to do with how you intend to hit the trigger and plinking. If you have no intention of plinking, it doesn't matter. if you're super good at it, definitely try to make sure to go for down back instead of just down. But if you don't want her to use as much V-trigger, period, because she can do the command grab quite a lot, and if you tend to stand far away from her, with this setup she will just whiff it from fairly far away too. If you don't want this to happen, you simply do as we've done in this input on screen now, and hit just heavy punch. This is followed by a quarter circle forward, V trigger, then by a usually standing V skill, it can also be forward V skill, and then you just tap it again. This is more so that she swings more, because it's easy for the swing to get hidden in this input. And if you want to practice more with the swing, then it's more important that she swings fairly often. You can therefore leave this out and only hit the V skill button once. Either way, the last time you hit the button, i.e. the first time if you only hit it once, and the second time if you hit it twice, hold the button until the end. This version also contains a quarter circle before the second V skill hit. And this adds one more chance for her to do the launcher kick and give you a punish opportunity. Do all of this set up based purely on how you intend to deal with the character, how much you feel like redoing that recording that day, or similar. The important thing with the back medium punch is that it must be fairly fast, though again, not really first frame, because it depends on the interaction with your action 3. All you care about is that your action 3 going into that move leads to that whip. Holding the medium punch button allows her to hold the whip itself instead of executing it immediately. And if you hit heavy kick, i.e. to do the V skill for the first one, she will not do this. She will cancel out of that move. There are other setups she has where she hits a kick and cancels out of the whip, but you don't often care as much. It can be set up fairly easily in various ways, but she also has other places where she holds it and don't specifically do that.
Perfect KO.
Overall, shift this in whatever way suits you while making sure to keep that medium punch. Therefore, for this, we're actually going to change this recording, because while we were very interested in showing off the difference with this one, it's also important to show all of the things it can do. So we're going to try to change this recording a little bit. We may change it again before the end of stream. It's a little bit easier with a single hit V trigger button. And since we've been talking about the first frame thing, we will also take advantage of this moment to demonstrate how to do the first frame input for certain things. If you've set the interval to 1 and left it on button input, and you are holding the button direction while you are doing this, the game will not register that you are holding back until you press the button, but it will register it as back the moment you do hit the button. So you can, this is usually much easier when you don't have to do things like jump over a character's head or something. And in this case, therefore, it's perfectly fine. You can just stay like this until you're comfortable, ready to do the input, and then hit like that. So in this case, we're again going to do V trigger twice instead. That was just heavy punch. You do have to restart this every time, and you do have to start holding the button in time every time. So try not to be too frustrated by it. It takes a little while to get used to. So that sort of thing. Simply at the end of that, therefore, we will just hold the medium kick button, or we will hold the V skill button, and we're only going to press it once this time, to reduce the number of swings so you can see what that's like. Wrong side, yes. Get it? Yeah, this is exactly as intended. So she does still swing with this input. And we're now going to shift to Kansuki Dynasty, actually, on the controller to demonstrate why this would be important to particular characters. In this case, she can choose herself whether or not to play Kami or Sakura, but the main point is that characters who respond very easily to the swinging, but don't necessarily have really good ways in on poison otherwise, without putting themselves at risk, can have some problems here.
I'll be on guard.
We'll be discussing this relative to the point system. Note that again, this stream isn't going to be as long as usual, so it's not actually going to continue too much longer than this. So we're turning back on all of the inputs and going into trying to get the points. This is also notably recorded without much hold on that medium punch, because as mentioned before, if you hold the medium punch and then hit the V trigger, she will generally just cancel out of the whip instead of hitting the medium whip. Technically she still does it even now most of the time because of the timings in the game, and it's important to think about this. Now she's not necessarily going to swing a lot less. It's not as if hitting it only once means that she is going to get that cut out of her style altogether. One, she already has a different place where she presses that V skill. And she also still can be interrupted or pushed into timings where Action 5's version of the V skill will still happen. Filling her V meter. So you will still get a good amount of practice without hitting the V skill twice in that last input. It just means that depending on your timing and your skill with the input itself, she may swing less. This is most important when she is in V trigger 1. We're not going to change it right away, but do note that I said it because it will come up again later. So as mentioned, in terms of dealing with her from a point system perspective, once you've passed the easiest difficulty level, you're not actually getting any points for the B skill punish at all. On the medium difficulty level, there are no points. At the hard difficulty level, you do get points, but you only get points if you landed a knockdown using, let's say, Kami's air throw, for example, or an air target combo, or just an air reset style strike, as in you jab her out of the air and then dash under or something. Some characters have good versions of this that they're aware of. But the main point is make sure you get a knockdown when you do it, and at that level you lose the points you were getting for the cross-ups. She's also more likely, as mentioned, to whiff her command grab in neutral with the extra hits of this type. But since she does not actually have a setup where her B meter is always high, this isn't just going to be a constant whiff fest, and sometimes she will end up using it all up uselessly, and other times she will really make your life miserable by her timing and spacing. Similarly, as you've just seen, she can whiff with the long-range version when she's too close anyway, so you have to think about it very carefully. Basically, if you allow Poison to start the swing on that move from too far away, without countering her on her way in, the button she hits while dropping decides whether or not you've won. Literally, it becomes a mix-up. However, quite a few characters have good options when they jump backward or attempt a cross-cut anti-air, particularly, obviously, aerially invincible ones. Even this still depends on understanding whether the poison is likely to swing over your head, whether she's likely to hit you in the face with the last parts of the active frames, or so on. And you have to spend a lot of time on this. But let's go back to the aforementioned V-Trigger 1. In V-Trigger 1, she throws Molotov cocktails instead, and she ends up with different distances she throws these cocktails based on the direction you hit along with the V-Trigger button. With this input, she's twice as likely to throw them close as far, but the second one, the one that we changed so that it is also a V-Trigger input, earlier one in Action 5, is also the more cancelable one a lot of the time. Meaning if you want to learn to deal with her cancels and mix-ups, this setup might be the one you want. If you're the type of player who tends to play very defensively and isn't looking for gaps or using your own invincible moves to get through, this may not be the way you want to input this, as it's likely that she'll just get blocked anyway. But if you are a player whose general feeling is, I want to interrupt this opponent from doing this thing, I want to hit lots of buttons, this can be a useful input type for you, as you will often end up in more difficult situations. This bot has a relatively reduced amount of damage that she does compared to Poison's capacity at certain spaces. It was not specifically because we couldn't find a way to get Poison to do her longer combos in the bot, but that we have specifically chosen not to have her do them this time. As she is a character where once she gets an advantage, it tends to become very, very complicated to stop her from having it. We felt that this might actually tempt players to overcommit or overdo it and learn less about it. But as you can see there, it's not really that your invincible move doesn't help you, but depending on your character, you still get burned. And this can actually be something she sets up on purpose in order to make sure that you don't actually manage anything. Most invincible moves, while they do hit quite well, are not devastating to her as a character, and they lose their invincibility often at timings where even if you were hitting her with them, sometimes she will knock you out of the animation before it finishes. Again, this does not apply to every character, so set up things according to what suits you. Noting, of course, that attacking her throw is rare. She can usually throw you after swinging in, or just throw you after dashing up, but she doesn't spend too much time doing these things exactly. With the original inputs that we were using, her V-Trigger 1 still works quite fine. She will do the same things but less often, and if you were in neutral with her instead, you'd be more or less just fine. You will still learn all of the same things, simply without the higher likelihood of being hit out of some move you were trying to use to stop her from getting pressure on you. Because, as you can see there, she just basically throws it twice. And the only way it would have changed is if you were going to trade on the first one. The bot does use maximum start for both B and CA. Generally you want to leave it as this because even if you want her to do more moves, you can just reset as you've seen here and get her to do more things as a generality. While her wheel kick is a move that one might benefit from learning to punish, it's one of those range moves where it's not that dangerous when used by a player who overuses it. Eventually, she doesn't get that much damage off it, so them doing it a few more times and you happening to do a big punish as a result on only one of those times isn't anywhere near as bad as certain other moves you find in the game, where the opponent spamming it means that you are constantly at risk of huge damage. She does have some good stuff that will work, and again, we just more or less decided not to put too much effort into making sure the bot had those combos. It makes action 2 even more complicated than it already is.
Perfect KO.
Note again that without this setup, unless you were really fast with the medium punch, she's generally not going to do heart rate or anything related to it. You can cause it to happen more, again by changing action 3, which is the easy way, and also by, if you really want to try putting a quarter circle back at the end of action 5 and see get. This will mostly just cause her to use the EX one though because of the other requirements of Action 5. And her tendency to be swinging in the first place. With such a complex character, we're still not sure the optimal way that every character in the game would work, because we now have to gather a lot of matchup knowledge as to how even higher level players play Poison in particular matchups. Once that's done, you can check back in maybe a month when we've gathered all of that data, check for the variants of Poison Bot that match your character. Our final demonstration will be me directly showing off what happens with a character with a projectile, basically. Depending on how this shows up and the timing of my Action 5 input, I may change it one more time. But from here, we're basically going to end the stream.
Dojo. Chun-Li.
Projectile characters do not have much of a problem dealing with her if she's not able to use the medium heart rate. They also don't have as much problem if she's constantly whiffing her command grab and not doing anything with the actual V-trigger available to her. There is a risk when she does swing at you, and there's a risk when she does her long command grab. But for many characters, it is still possible to throw their projectile and still respond in time if they've recognized that this is what's going to happen. So you can see how this would be even easier on a character with a full swing projectile, arcing projectile, various ways to deal with her. Even though the swing is functionally projectile invincible, it's still not necessarily the best type of input for here. So this particular version of Action 5 is not recommended for this type. She spends a lot of time far away, carefully keeping you out, but you're not really learning much as a projectile character. You get to spam them more or less for free. This is not going to be a thing that Guile is overwhelmed by, especially since the animation of Sonic Boom and the fact that he can slowly send out slow ones that she will go over but then have to deal with flash kicks and so on, make things very difficult on the poison side, meaning that our better option here is to shift this around again. And therefore, once again, we're going to use it such that the heavy punch is the only thing we hit, but we are also going to make sure that the medium punch is still there. We do not have to do it as first frame here though. It may help if we don't. This is the final potential variant. We are still not testing all of the aspects of it, but we figured we should put it in the disc guidance for anyone who uses these primarily as their way of deciding which inputs to use. So this doesn't have to be first frame, and in fact it may benefit from not being first frame. So let's turn this back off and record normally. We're going to do the back medium punch, crouch heavy punch, quarter circle forward, V trigger, and then once again hold V skill. And let's check that by itself to see what happens. There we go. So as you can see, the medium punch is no longer first frame. There is no second quarter circle back to create a new, more used heart rate, because that would probably not be a good representation. We can put it in. You can try putting it in yourself and see how it goes if it suits you, the character you play going up against her. That will not be demonstrated in this stream because we have not had enough time to test whether or not it interacts timing wise with the rest of the bot, but we know that this interacts more or less fine. In fact, let me verify for you that this works correctly with action 3 because maybe I wasn't fast enough with it. See from the various interactions that it shifts her rhythm quite a lot. This is because of the speed that one has to input certain things in order for them to work directly. This is also why holding the medium kick can be so important in these cases. If you delay it, she gets one move. If you don't delay it, she gets a different move, and so on. So it's good that that's actually showing up today. We are going to try to delay the medium, the V skill a little bit longer, therefore. That should give us more of a motion. But even with this, it appears to be insufficient actually, mostly because she's usually jumping or something. However, the input is actually equally good for the purpose, mainly because this is probably related to the speed she's moving at as a whole, i.e. she's normally in the air when the medium punch would activate it, or it's just too slow. This could also be an issue with Action 3, but usually it isn't. Your main aim here is mostly to try not to overcomplicate the input itself, as stressing yourself out about it doesn't get you anywhere. You do have the option to not let go of this button, but it causes the launcher kick to turn out weird sometimes. This is also the one where you probably want to hold the medium punch for longer. But it is difficult because you cannot actually hold it until the very end. Making this an exercise in hitting 4 different buttons in sequence along with other things. And if you've ever tried to input our Blanca bot, you know how well that goes. But there we have it, toward the end of the animation where the V skill button is held. Oh, no back at all. But you get the idea. Arrange the buttons however best suits you for proceeding with this very quick input. The outcome you need is to simply let her do the heart rate more. Let's check the action 3 versus action 5 actually. And in the end, that ends up showing that this version of the bot actually never had that correct entirely, but again, it doesn't actually matter. All it means is that she uses less hard raid and wheel kick. So if you find that you needed more of it, you simply fix the associated input, in this case the action 3, and it should work out. The quarter circle back into medium punch was already still functioning with one of the other inputs, and that was where it was coming from. In this case, therefore, let's fix it along with action 1 and then move on. Once again, our goal was to increase the amount of use of the heart raid and to shift it so that we had gone back to the crouch heavy punch alone. That has an extra input. No? No. Because it'll go forward a bit. And that one is oddly the correct one. Over. that changed, our final demonstration. Noting again that the goal was not specifically to get her to do the heart rate too much more, but to make it so that her timing is different relative to just having projectiles thrown at her. And as you can now see, she cancels more, she shifts more, she gives you more reason to care about the move. And removes your capacity to just use projectiles for out as easy. Since if it were just a matter of the heart rate, it would not come up. She could easily be put at a range, bot-wise, where you don't benefit at all from the poison side, from just swinging at you or trying the heart rate itself, as it wouldn't reach, whereas the projectile will, as you've just seen. The goal therefore is to make it so that when she is in that space and hasn't been hit by something else recently, she's more likely to try to swing over it, leading to situations like that. But you will also note that with the button held for longer, she'll often just cancel the heart rate and swing instead, which is kind of what you want. If you want her to actually do the move, the whole process becomes much easier. Don't hold the medium punch. And since I'm at it, I will demonstrate the last part, specifically that if you did change this input, this button can be anything, as you do not need to hold it. Is that going to be enough? If you do hold it, this is what will happen, especially if the other one was first ready. So with that, you've been given all of the current options for our poison bot. You can find the inputs at 2-mk.org/bots, which will take you to the page for all bots available. Poison bot is of course on her own page, so just add poison-bot to the end of the main URL, and all of the information will be there available for you. On Monday we'll be having our mishmashing battle lounge for Street Fighter V, though the format may be a little different than usual. And next Tuesday we expect to have at least a good try at a Tuesday train. Wednesday is the day next week where we're expecting to not have any specific content streamed. And Thursday, another look at Kame House, provided nothing strange comes up this week. Next week, Friday, therefore, will be the final Our Lucia bot. So disc guidance for that will be available then. However, note once again that all of the bots for the new characters are available on the site. So you can go find Honda bot, which we did disc guidance for last week, and Lucia bot, which is next Friday's disc guidance, already on 2-mk.org. This has been Rillian along with Kanzuki Dynasty and Just Fine. Good luck with your training, and good night, everyone.